How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord of hosts. My soul longs, indeed it faints for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh sing for joy to the living God. In season 1 of the Dwelling Place podcast, this longing took me on a 6-month journey around the UK to dwell with a variety of intentional Christian communities, sharing interviews with community members, leaders and founders along the way. In this second season of the Dwelling Place podcast, I invite you to join me in the US as I occasionally visit intentional Christian communities and share community-related interviews in the midst of my seminary education. In sharing these conversations, exploring the blessings, challenges, and wisdom of intentional Christian communal living, I hope to share glimpses of the transforming presence of the living God and inspire how it is we might be called to contribute to making God's kingdom manifest on earth, enabling people, God's beloved, to experience God's loving dwelling place.
My name is Simon Thomas, and I live currently in South East London in a place called Peckham.
Very nice, and we are currently walking very close to Scotland.
We are, and apparently very close, that we could actually walk into Scotland if we're not careful.
At a eco-gathering,
Yeah.
in which community has come up quite a lot already.
It has, yeah.
And Simon, I'm talking to you because you mentioned that you started kind of community in London. And so
Yeah.
I'm really curious as to how that started and what that looked like.
So in a way we started partly when we got together, my wife and I, and even before that, we always valued the element that we couldn't really learn without each other. So it was the understanding of life could be an individualistic learning experience, and we'd somehow try and get more wise if we read more and talked to more people and wandered around more nations. But in the end, it was that you could only really learn from other people and interact with their experiences and then reflect that in your own. And once you started to do that, it was completely enriching, because you just found that you didn't just have a double whammy experience. It was completely, exceedingly abundantly above all you can ask or think, to use the phrase well. So we did start community post really not being able to have children, but also before that, because we thought if we want to have children, we would also like to bring them into community. So we started to have people living in the house, growing a house. And even before we did that, we did an intentional community with another couple, bought a house, 6 or 7 bedrooms.
In London?
In London, and just had all sorts of eclectic people living there. And I mean eclectic. People from all kinds of backgrounds, and then people in incredibly intense need. Drug addicts, people from background, psychological issues, all kinds of things. And did that for 6 years. And sometimes it was a nightmare. Complete nightmare. But it was just a really big, very humbling learning experience, because even the 2 people we did it with, who one I've known since school days, 4 of us believers, but just trying to get over your own actions, interactions, conflicts, reconciling things, is just an enormous journey. But exciting, because we're still good friends, even now.
Probably better, deeper friends.
Yeah, much deeper. And would we if we had occasionally seen each other and done a few things and got together for coffee? I doubt it very much. So it digs deep very quickly. I think that's probably a good phrase.
Yeah, and with that house, which had 6 or 7 rooms, was that co-owned with the other couple, or did people pay rent? What was the kind of operational
Well,
model
in
around
theory,
that?
some people were supposed to contribute to it, but in the end, we bought it together, we paid the rent, so we dealt with all the bills and then kind of worked out what was the most fair and equitable way for people to do it. people with nothing, people not doing stuff, people recovering. We didn't really put charges on, but for others, yeah, we did it in a fair, kind of equitable way in terms of how much the money that the house would cost. But we basically covered the bills between the four of us.
And were there any shared rhythms which held together the community?
Yeah, we did try and do that as two couples and then bring people into that. And obviously we were holding sort of groups of all sorts of community elements within our different church circles. We're both in different churches within the house. So the things that people could come into, both within the house and then external to the house, where they could interact with those things. So you could call it circles within circles within circles.
Which it often is with community.
Yeah, which is really a very much more organic way of doing things. And finding out what they were, people were connected to, where their circles were, and allowing them to bring in their circle to yours. And that's the most fascinating one, because at first it's kind of scary, but after a while it's really, again, challenging, but also very much, it grows you.
And so as two couples, you were praying together,
Yep.
eating together, and then the other residents, community members would join in that if they felt like it, or was there a sense of
Yep.
commitment?
Trying to say there's a rhythm, there's commitment, a bit like a small monastic element. There's certain things we do, but no, there's no kind of sense where they were compelled to do anything in that sense. But we wanted to kind of grow the sense that if people are going to be in a community together, they need to interact in particular ways, at least to start some sort of relational growth. Otherwise, it just becomes very much, again, living in 6 different rooms and doing 6 different things. So you've got to create a bit of rhythm. All life is about rhythms. And, your rhythm might not be mine, might be his or her. But it's really important that somehow we give up our rhythms for other people's. And that in itself helps us grow. Because I always think that my rhythm is a better rhythm than your rhythm. And that praying at 7 o'clock is not good. Should pray at 4 o'clock. Just simple things, but they are tension things as well in life.
And so how did you, how is community fostered compared to having 6 people, 7 people living in separate rooms?
I think sometimes you have to go a little bit task driven. So doing some things actively together, either redoing parts of the house, of which there were loads. There was a kind of interesting garden, if I can call it that. So there were ways to just interact within the space that we had ourselves. And then you can grow little things that you decide, why don't we just go and do this together? Why don't we go and create this? Why don't we go and develop this idea? And then sometimes we'd coalesce around thoughts, areas, subjects, society, jobs, work, life, and try and make it a bit of a work-life balance. But we did in the early days have a lot of movement, and that made it much harder, because I think it wasn't stabilised. The couple, 2 couples fine, but I think we had about 40 people over 5-6 years. So yeah, a lot more transient, which is the nature of London as well, and that's something we discovered about urbans, is that people are not as settled and find it hard to be settled, and jobs move people along, relationships, life, etc. I mean, just thinking about that rhythm of being together, staying together. I mean, I can move on to the one once we built our own house. Building our own house was an exercise where we thought, there was a few friends helped do bits of it with us. But as we started to get people in, we got people involved in that being in the house very early days, almost as some of it was still being constructed. And that was a really brilliant element, because then there's a bit of ownership in the literal place that you're in. And I think ownership, or the phrase skin in the game, but is really key to people feeling belonging. I think there's a word you used earlier. And if you just come in, you think, well, it's not my place, it's not, I'm not really that involved, it's not. But you start to do something, you've decorated something, you've made something. And we've tried to do that all the way through. So there's almost like, well, how would you like this room to be? Should we think about it together? Should we try and create a little bit of dynamic in what this space should look like if it works better in the community of the house? So we've always done that all the way along, but I think we can do it more now in the space we're in currently than we were as two couples. But ownership is a key. We'll come back to ownership maybe later, but ownership is a key, difficult area in the whole idea of building community.
And in both cases, the purchased house and the house being built, how did people come to you or join the community?
It's really interesting, yeah. Pretty well always through connections, relationships, contacts, networks. I think only once or twice we went on some of those networks, flat share things or whatever else. But generally they worked the worst. It was always like a friend, there's a person here. Like the last couple we've just had was I think she was from a Hindu background, he's from a Muslim background. She came first, then her boyfriend later. And, that was a really interesting interaction in the community. They now return and want to kind of come around more and more and more. Now they've gone out of the community, only in there for a couple of years, but feel it's like one of the communities that's a massive part of their life. And at the moment, their faiths are in completely different places, but they connected with that sense of community which landed them in London and never lived in London. So it's also a place issue, because people need to feel that a place is their place, not just a literal place in the house, but even territory. And cities are pretty challenging places, particularly when you're trying to find your feet. You get your job, you got your life, you've got to deal with almost everything in a city of 10 million. And that's one of the reasons we started in the first place, because urban places, one of the massive issues of London is loneliness and isolation. And it's pretty epidemic at the moment. And obviously COVID made it worse.
And so did you kind of hold those communities from a place of kind of your own faith, like Christian rooting, but open to anyone?
Yep. So in the house currently, we've got one couple. She's got faith. He's very open, married to her. There's obviously us as a couple. Then currently the other two have a vibrant faith, and they're in their early 20s. So we've got a multi-generational house. And that's the first time we've had that, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's another aspect to community which we didn't intend at all, completely organic. But in fact, they love being around people of different age groups, even though the demographic in which most of their life is lived is in mid-20s friendships. But they bring all their friends to that and say, can we all be involved? Which is kind of slightly odd. You think, you don't want these guys involved as well, but it's just, I think it's the missing element. The kind of 3 generational stuff is not the experience of most people's lives. There are not 3 generations of most families in the UK these days.
So in the current house, it's 3 couples?
Yep.
And how is your life shaped together?
So shaped by a little bit more randomly in this particular phase. So we times we meet together, we times we pray together, but not necessarily all as 6, but we create events together. And we create moments together. We create ideas together. We create schemes of kind of innovation, like how can we solve the water issue? How can we solve the, power issues? How can we live more simply? How can we live more ethically in terms of food? So we're really dealing with life in the house. and challenge each other to say, bring something to the table in how we can live a better life together. And then we experience that, which we're doing at the moment, which is to push it out to all of a small group of friends from each one, to then interact those particular groups of people together and create conversations. So sometimes two of the couples might get together, invite a load of friends, but really catch it round a particular theme. Obviously we're massive environmental connected people, so we love to do it around those particular issues, but we can do it anywhere, pitches anywhere. And to be honest, it's really an open door. We've never had people come around thinking, oh my God, it was a boring evening. Just because I think people are hungry for just real change, real things and real depth. And when they encounter it, they just think, why have I never done this before? Why am I not doing it? But as I think we talked earlier, it's definitely growing. Getting more and more younger guys and people coming and wanting to find places, but struggling as to how to form it, shape it.
Yep.
So that's why I think movements that can grow, give some guidelines, give some shape, give some ideas, give some red lines as well. Yeah, really important, would be very helpful. Because I think it's scary for a lot of people, but once they do it, once they engage, they think, don't really want to do anything else.
Yeah.
It's really true. I think we've had 40 people live with us in the last 15, 20 years. I'd say probably only 2 or 3 would never want to come back or do anything again, which is good in a way, that even the most difficult, complicated of people, where there's been fallouts, there's been arguments, there's been very severe breakdowns, has involved in very deep elements of reconciliation, which never would have happened unless you're challenged in a community environment. Because you don't deal with a lot of those issues unless you either have to, or you're faced with it in such a way that you can just say, I'm going to run away forever, which is what a lot of people do.
And then when you said like, bring things to the table, do you often eat together? Or is that just kind of informally, you end up in the same space and have these conversations?
Yeah, we do we create. So we are quite, using your word, intentional. We are intentional about, let's organise a meal, let's organise an evening. We do round the fire stuff, because round the fire is just brilliant. It's quite organic, reasonably eco, as long as it's, proper, not burning rubbish, but it's a really good place because you're not in front of a screen, not in front of anything. It's just really open conversation. So, and again, you just sticking stuff on there, cooking stuff. It's very basic, it's very earthy, but it's simple, powerful stuff that we've lost.
Yeah. And how do you get together as an internal community to organise these events or gatherings?
Yeah. A lot of stuff, because of our lives, we do through social media connection and stuff like that, because literally you've got a videographer, you've got a girl working for really quite severe young people with autism. You've got someone else who's a journalist working in all sorts of media areas. You've got another person who works for a university on IT stuff. So it's completely mad, diverse household. So we just try and communicate through a group WhatsApp and then set things up, then sit down. But we grab conversations all the time. Every day there's conversations, we sit down. And then there are things that come up, theological, personal, lifestyle, and very deep things. So I'm sitting down, I won't reveal the conversation, but 11 o'clock at night, somebody comes down, oh, I've got this terrible thing. What about this? Well, when we do some, so half-hour chat, cup of coffee, sit down, interact, pray. That's the incredible space you've got. And you could do it lots of other ways. Wandering sheep. But it's just that context draws out more quickly but more deeply. So we don't create a rhythm because it would be impossible. It'd be like a diary from Planet Zongo. You wouldn't be able to do it. So we have to be intentional about events, meals, things, and then a little bit more organically random. But because your relationships grow stronger and stronger, you could just do it. You got half an hour now? Yeah, sure. Let's talk. And in some ways that's a little bit better because you're not forcing something into a exact conversation. We're going to have to try and deeply engage now at this point in our evening, but then it's just more of a help. What's going on? Can we chat?
Yeah, because I was going to ask about that, because especially in the London context and working professional context, it can get incredibly hard to put something in a schedule or rhythm and align people's rhythm. So yeah, I was curious about how that worked. And I guess, does the more informal approach work because it sounds like you're a more stable community now? I
think so, yeah. And you've got to vary it, and you'll know this from your own experience, Lakshmi, is that essentially you've got to work with the flow, engagement, interaction of where people feel the most comfortable. It just so happens that one person in our house is very good on media connection and will just not stop. So we were going to organise something, but can we just go around this again? Because nobody's responded to the last one. And that's just a sign of growth and maturity, that nobody goes, well, I'm going off, I'm not getting involved in that. It's just that we all want to be there, and we want to do these things, but we find our lives are a little bit more complicated than that.
And how long have you, this kind of community, been together, these three couples?
This one, very short at the moment. And it's jumped into deep ground within months.
Wow.
So it's almost been since, was it January or December 25?
Yeah.
And then before that, mixed community, where some people of faith, some people of no real faith, but other faith backgrounds. Again, that was very, very deep for all sorts of other reasons, because discovery, journey, life, relationships, wanting to get some answers. And then before that, we've had communities that have been together for 5 years sometimes. One girl came for 6 months for an MA, stayed for 6 years.
Wow.
And I like that more, because they in touch, they come round, they stay, and have been doing over the last 6 years. Still come to events, still come to things. So it's like an extended community. And then they've all gone and sometimes built community in their own spaces. And that's the other thing. They all think, well, I'm not going to live on my own, I'm not going to live in an isolated flat. I'm going to do it with a friend, I'm going to do this. So it does really inspire people to create something in their own space then as well.
Completely agree.
And it really is catchy in a really good way.
Yeah.
And if you find that people struggle, then that's really part of us trying to understand that we live on a very, very crowded planet at one level, yet the need to engage and interact with people different to yourself is utterly vital, not just for living, but also for survival. So it's a bit of a learning lesson as well for some people who would rather live on their own, be isolated and just get on with life as far away from anyone as possible. And we've had people like that living with us.
And then how do you engage that?
Slowly. But again, it's just felt needs, finding places, finding spaces, finding points where a person's life interacts, finding a particular delight for that person and jumping into that space and saying, let's go and do that then, even if it's outside any of your comfort zones. And it goes a long way, and that's part of breaking into the other area, which is, everyone's got trauma, everyone's got pain somewhere. And it's at those points where life gets difficult, then gets better. But you have to hit the pain and the pressure points. I think if you avoid them, that's not really community. And I think if you try and skirt over them, like we've had very, very deep conflicts. And I mean deep to the extent of, thinking you're rejecting people, thinking just by moving someone from one room to another. And it just nothing to do with the actual physical situation, but everything to do with what it plays into in past situations for their own life. So I think sensitivity and massive amounts of this is just very, very careful, deep territory that we're walking in. Tread carefully, as they say. And hours of listening. Hours and hours of listening. If you want to be in community and you don't want to listen, forget it.
I was going to ask, building on that, what are some of the key lessons you've learned about conflict and reconciliation through living in community?
Don't avoid it. Yeah, I'd love to avoid it. None of us really. I mean, there are very few people who love conflicts and deliberately create them because they love them so much. But most people don't. Therefore, most people avoid them. And they avoid them because it brings up not really the conflict itself, which can be relatively minor, but it brings up issues of life and rejection, which I think is a big issue for all of our lives. So that's a really big learning area. But sometimes recognising you might need a third party outside of the house to bring in to be a part of it, and being humble enough to say, we've really got to do that. This isn't going to work. We need somebody to listen, hear both sides, sit down and give some sort of way forward. That's been rare, but it has happened at times. And also just signposting people in the nicest possible way, saying, do you know what, this is a genuine health or mental health issue, and you really shouldn't avoid it, and we're not the experts in it, but here's some options for you to really... And again, those can be hard moments, but really important moments for bringing that person into a better place in their own lives. And again, I don't think a lot of people really would come across those things unless you hit a traumatic situation in your life and you have to. So we never go and say, oh, I've got really bad mental health issues, but I'm going to get it sorted out. You do it because suddenly your brain goes, your mind goes, your thinking goes, your emotions get completely stirred, and then you think, oh, I've got to do something about this. And then often it's not too late, but it's much more complicated then. But community is a good healer. And that's the other thing we've seen, massive plus. Communities are healing places. But there's the danger side, which is they can also be very, very difficult, traumatic places for people. So somehow you've got to have enough wisdom within the house to know that. So I would say that early days, as in all things, you make millions of mistakes and think, what was I thinking? But as time goes on, you realise that you really do need wisdom on the planet. And that could come with years, or it could just come with the fact that people are much more humble and they can be wise at 24. Not to do with age, it's simply to do with how fast you learn and you understand your mistakes.
And what are some of the other conditions you would say are important for a community to be a healing community?
Recognising diversity is much bigger than you think, and that you think people are culturally similar backgrounds, similar ages. There's no such thing as cultural similarity. Everyone is unbelievably uniquely different, and it is always conflict, even as you will know, and we both know from marriage. There's a simple, very living example of, oh, so it should be fine, we've both got faith, we're following Jesus, everything's great, we pray together, we resolve things as you go. Not really. And, marriage can be a surface thing. You can live for 25, 30 years. And you can be quite happy, but you really haven't engaged in what a real relationship is about. So I think healing community means you're going to face quite a lot of pain. And pain is part of the healing process. And it's unlikely that you don't have to go through a bit of pain and trauma in order that healing arises. There's no easy solutions to reconciliation on the planet or in life. I think that whole reconciling all things to Christ is one of the overriding statements. You think, that's a really quite big issue you're trying to sort out there, God. That's not straightforward. Whether it's Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, rich nor poor, male nor female. Those are big separations.
What other nuggets of wisdom would you want to pass on to people who are thinking about living more intentional community or are currently and just wanting to go deeper?
I would say that if you're not thinking of any sort of community in your life, then it's not going to be a great life, because community is about life. And if you want to engage the planet, you want to engage towns, cities, villages, the diversity of planet Earth, I don't think there's any other route than to start exploring some level of community. It might just be with a couple of friends, it might be in a marriage, it might be in other relationships, it might be in all kinds of different things. But if you are trying to avoid levels of community in your life, then you're really missing out on one of the beautiful surprises that we have as human beings. That is to live in a diverse, complex set of relationships. Then beautiful, innovative, dynamic things start to happen. And you can be a fantastically creative, amazing person on your own, but it's unlikely that's going to grow much unless you do it. Artists always say, an artist is great on his own, he can do some amazing things. And we've seen it down the ages, but when you start to put real arts collectives together, it's an explosion. It isn't just an increase, it's an utter explosion. That's what community is. An explosion of, the glory that is to come, I think.
And what would you say, and maybe using a story to illustrate these, what a particularly great blessing has been of your time in community, and then what has been of particular challenge?
Yeah. I think there's so many blessings. Here's a really bizarre one. One girl was living with us, and she was from, let's say, a part of the world where she hadn't seen lots of kind of difficult things happen. The week before she came, reported in headline news, somebody got murdered about 200 yards down the road. And I think her mum said to her, where are you going to live? And she said, yeah, down in this area. And so there was a kind of slight anticipation of this poor girl. And then she realised that the place, we were still half building some parts of it. So we had that sort of interaction of, really sorry, haven't quite got there. And I just thought she was so, it just broke something in her. So she cried quite a lot. And then it opened up something in her, which is absolutely beautiful. And I remember just doing something fun one day. She came down upstairs, and there wasn't actually a staircase in there. She had come down a ladder, and she came down in a bunny outfit or something. And it was just purely to break the mould of saying, I feel at home in this place finally. And again, she was in touch when she got married, and fantastic family life. And again, very community orientated person now. I think in terms of difficult, it's when people completely want to get everything they can out of it and not put anything in it. Then it creates a bitterness in the house. It creates a kind of unsung, unsaid sort of atmosphere. And I think when you have to crack into those, and then sometimes you don't see a result. In this case, probably over all the years, it's one of two this particular person didn't want to do it, didn't want to go there, and then just left and walked off, and then things didn't get any better. Then you feel like you kind of failed and things haven't worked. But that is the nature of having to somehow get through those things and think, yep, it is going to happen. It's not all going to work, it's not all going to go well, and it's not all going to be where people are at. So you've got to realise that there are going to be fallouts, and they're not resolvable. They might be resolvable later on in life, hopefully, and that's your prayer. And that's quite difficult, because psychologically you do want some good ends to stories and some good results, but it's just not real life, unfortunately. Brokenness creates brokenness as well, so that's a guard sometimes, is you do have to watch extremely broken people who you suddenly realise are in that state, being in a context with other people. That can create really big rifts and divisions very quickly. So you've got to manage that as you go. And that can be difficult sometimes, because it creates a enormous tension, which is mostly unsaid.
Is there anything that I haven't asked which I should ask?
I suppose I was going to ask you just the financial issue, because finance is a big stress area, and it's also a big area of contention. So you can answer it from your point of view, but from ours we make it really clear what's the commitment, and we will agree different rents for different people. We never really go on the principle of no rent, just on the basis of what we said this morning. People do want to give, and they feel useless if they don't put something, even if it's minimal. So we've got nothing set, and we work it out almost as we go, and we work it out according to, obviously it's massively lower than anything in the market anyway, because in a way we're trying to provide an affordable place, but a safe place, and then building a community together as we do it. So we kind of put a few guidelines and rules, not massive, but simple things of just how to treat the house, people, things, and then help people through those little things. We actually only have one washing machine, so there's an interaction on there. There's quite a nice little talk around the washing machine occasionally. But there's simple things like that, and how you do things, how you dry things, a lot of practicalities in living in life when you're all in the same space. And obviously, as we were sharing kitchens for years, all in one place and one kitchen, then there's a lot of kind of more interactive stuff, probably more with my wife Paul than it was being with me, but you have to just very carefully talk it through, and she's brilliant at that. But yeah, I don't know how you do the finance thing and what you do on that.
I think there are just so many different models.
There are, exactly.
So many
and some
different
could
models.
be free, some could be staying, could be there for a time, and there's no commitment. I think in London, we're trying to create a community of people who are trying to jump into the city, find a safe place to be, grow in that community for a period. Then maybe if they're younger, they'll transition into other things, and then maybe create their own. So we feel we're a transitional move on community, but we are providing stability for one couple who've so far been with us for 10 years. So it's long term and short term, and I think that has to be the nature of London, because of the transient nature of how life, job, work, etc., etc. I think if we were thinking about it again, we could do what another young couple have come to us over as saying, we're going to set up these all over the place. And maybe that's a route that you guys in Intentional Community kind of network could think about. Because to be honest, you could establish 20, 30, 40, 50, and you'd be overflowing tomorrow. There's no shortage of people. We've never had to go around and say, oh, should we fill this place with anyone else? It's like 5, 6, 7, 8 people appear straight away. And it's back to our thing on work, finance and places. We are in a different space. A side issue is the co-working space we have tons of in London. I never would work out what they're all doing on their laptops. Do you know? I felt like going and asking them sometimes. I thought it might be rude. Because they can't all be influencers.
Well, all of my paid work is laptop based.
Okay.
And all my volunteer work, actually some of it is laptop based as well.
Yeah. So there is a lot of stuff that people just generally do online.
Yeah.
But that's another community of its own, the co-working community. And it's massive. Like I go into a cafe in Peckham, there might be like 25 people in there. You know, all under 25. So, who knows where that's emerging.
And the title of this podcast is Dwelling Place, after Psalm 84.
Wow, beautiful.
Dwelling place. So I like asking people to close, where is it that you've experienced God dwelling especially richly in your community life?
So I think the community of the Trinity in creation, which includes us, has meant that when you sit into the context of all that God has given to us, that is ourselves, our human relationships, wildlife, animals, creation, trees, plants, the whole thing together. I think when you're in community, we've experienced some of those moments where all those things come together and you realise that the deep understanding of the theology of God inventing, creating an earth which he didn't want to separate, didn't want to disconnect from, wanted to love, wanted to connect with Father, Son and Holy Spirit. You realise that is just mind-blowing beyond the universe. And then you're part of that. There isn't a better community to be involved in, really, is there? You think, would I like to hang out with the Father, Son and Holy Spirit? Yeah. And all these other people, and then it can be, as I said, that verse I love, exceedingly abundant above all you can ask or think. And that's why ask or think is a mind-blowing concept. And you just have those moments, and we've had them in community, in life, like we were sitting on the roof of our house once. And it was just a moment where we're sitting there looking over a Peckham neighbourhood with a big 14-storey tower block behind us, with a whole group of people in the house thinking, this is nuts, we're feeling like sort of kids on a tree thing. And yet presence of God was there and conversation is deep. And other people around thinking, it's those complete nutters from 24 again. But we've also made a big influence on the street. So we encourage various elements of our community to interact with our street and our neighbours, so that we're not just the centre, just because we happen to be there as supposedly the owners, but it's actually everyone. So there's people who help with IT, people help looking after some of them, and go around and see them, because we've got quite a few elderly guys living on the street at the moment. And we're dealing with domestic abuse next door. So, you know, everyone gets involved then in not just your issues, but the issues of the actual area. And seeing that in your community is also, you just think, yes, this is what it should be about. Because you can't just action that as church. It's got to be church in your own house. And then you're there in the living situation. I'll give you one, kind of incognito to an extent, but there was a violent situation. So one person in the house phoned the police. Another person went to the couple we know next door to them, and then went to the door. Woman was badly injured. So all in all in the house, various members were connected with just seeing that person get some help and get some response, but all at the same time. And that's community in action.
I find great solace in that.
Yeah.
That in community I don't have to be able to do it all by myself.
No.
And there's a sense of like, oh, these are my giftings. And I'll do this bit. And
Yeah.
that my community mate has giftings in different places and fills
That's so
kind
true.
of a whole. And
Yeah.
I really love the metaphor of the body of Christ. And Yeah, I find that beautiful in community and very
Yeah.
relieving. And I think sometimes in today's world there's a pressure like, there's so much to fix. I'm like, how do I do it? And it's like, this is how I can contribute, and then this is how this other person's going to contribute, and it creates a whole.
But it takes a while, doesn't it? I don't know about yours and how it develops, but those things take a little while to tease out. But when they start to emerge, as you say, you're relieved because you're just not that person who can do those things anyway.
And loves doing them.
And loves doing them, yeah.
And they're like, that task that I really don't like doing, someone absolutely adores doing.
Yeah, like somebody said, I love making all this stuff and cooking it. I said, fantastic. Yeah, just go and do it. And it's just like what we were saying this morning, wasn't it? Giving things, but then being part of the reception as well.
Well, thank you, Simon.
That's a pleasure. It's really, I was dying to talk to you.